All right, welcome back to the Content Marketing Playbook. I'm your host, Josh Culler with Culler Media. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about how to get consistent content produced and published, which also means distributed. This is a topic that everybody skirts around, and they all have like this secret formula of how to get consistent content out there. And then they go into like the whole philosophy side of it and mindset and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, what you really need is actionable items in order to get consistent content out on your platforms, whether that's Facebook, Instagram, Google My Business, YouTube, podcast, whatever it is. You need a set plan in order to make sure that happens, because at the end of the day, motivation is something that like kind of wears off at some point. And I truly believe that, especially for some people. But there are those of you who, you're a small business owner, you can't afford to bring on a full-time marketing person. You can't afford to hire somebody like myself that's a content producer. And you know that you need content, but you just don't know how to actually get it out there consistently to where you'll be able to get it consistent enough and long-term enough to actually see results and see the fruits of your labor in that. And so I want to give you that specific layout. It's very simple, and these are all actionable items that you can actually do right now. But for those of you, you're a small business owner, and that's what this podcast is all about. It's for small business owners, people that are maybe solopreneurs, or you have a small business and maybe you don't have a marketing person, you're kind of bootstrapping and doing everything yourself, or you do have a marketing person, maybe you are the marketing person, you just need a little bit more guidance on content marketing. This is the roadmap that I lay out for each and every single one of my clients that I do content production for. So content production is like the only thing that I do in my business. And that's basically it. Like I don't do anything else. I don't do funnel building. I don't do web development and branding. I used to do branding, and I don't even do that anymore. And so this works. Like I promise you, if you actually take these steps that I'm telling you to do, then you will be able to get consistent results and consistent content out there in order to see those results. Because the reason why I bring this up is because the last thing that I want to see you guys do is to, maybe start a podcast and go 3 or 4 months into it, and you're all gung-ho, you get all the equipment, you get the mic, you get the arm, the shock mount, the pop filter, you get the lights, the camera and everything, and you spend thousands of dollars on all this gear and all this effort on planning it, but then you don't see results in 3 to 4 months, and then you give up. Which is why I've always talk about having a goal for your content and making sure that you have a specific clear path that you want to go, because that's going to push you through those time periods where you're not seeing results maybe, but you actually are, because it takes time to get consistent results, especially with content. But I know a lot of people out there, they just don't know how to get started into it, which I have another podcast about how to get started in content marketing. But then once you're past that point, you're like, I want to get started, I want to do this. What's the actual game plan that I need to take action on in order to get that consistent flow? Because it's easy to start, it's hard to keep that consistent and keep it going. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we jump into it, if you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the Content Marketing Playbook on all podcast platforms. If you're watching the video on YouTube, the links are down in the description for the podcast. If you're on the podcast, thank you for joining me. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, after this show, make sure you head back over to the homepage, review this podcast. I would much, much appreciate that. Make sure you give me some honest feedback, even if it's constructive criticism. Anyways, I can provide more value or make this podcast more valuable, just let me know. If you have any questions, even if it's not about this episode, but if it is about this episode, or if you have any other questions about content marketing in general, shoot me an email, josh@cullermedia.com, Culler spelled Culler. Be happy to answer any questions that you guys have about content marketing. So let's jump in. How to get consistent content produced and distributed or published. So there's 3 layers that I have for this, and under each layer, actually, there is levels or steps basically that you got to take action on in order to have a good game plan of how to get that consistent flow of content out. So I'll just tell you from the start, right off the bat. Like I told you earlier in the show, I do this for my clients. As we sit down, we create this content marketing plan, and then I tell them how I'm going to deliver this consistent flow of content on a daily basis. And we have that systematized. Like it's literally a machine that happens. There is automation in it, but there's also human touches. But we have the process set up to where we don't really ever see any like flaws in the process. We don't ever see just like gaps in this. And so this works. I'm just telling you right now, it works. So the first thing is you got to lay the foundation. This is the biggest piece of everything here, because you can, have all this automation going. You can have all this content that you've shot, but if you don't have the foundation laid for this, then it's just going to crumble. You're going to quit 3 or 4 months in, and then all of this is going to be for nothing. You're going to say content marketing works. You're going to be another one of those people, and it's because you didn't do it right. So we got to make sure that you do it right. Let's lay the foundation. So the first thing is, you guys hear me talk about all this. Like this is like literally on repeat what I talk about. The first thing is, what's your goal for your content? And now I actually have podcast episodes specifically for each one of these foundational topics. So go back and listen to those. I'm not going to go super deep into it here. So you got to go back and listen, but I'll give a summary. So set a goal for your content. I always tell people, do not just put content out there for brand awareness, because that has no measurable ROI. And when you're doing content marketing, especially if you're a business owner, you're always wanting to see results on stuff. But if it's just brand awareness, that's something that's not tangible. There's no hard data that says this is what, got me the results of what I'm doing right now. So you may know that content marketing works, but if you're not seeing those results, now again, results don't come in immediately. This isn't advertising. This is content marketing. It's not advertising to somebody and pitching them on a specific product or service. So you have to understand that. But in the meanwhile, you've got to make sure you have a goal for your content. If you started that podcast, why did you start the podcast? If you're putting video content out, why are you putting video content out? Define what a conversion means for you, understanding that content marketing is that top layer of marketing, essentially, to provide value to people and to get them into your funnel. But at the end of the day, that top layer of content should be to drive people to the bottom of the funnel, which essentially means a conversion. So you got to establish a goal. Next is, who is your target audience? You got to figure out who you are actually, gearing this content to. Now, something that I've actually just learned, I just jumped off a coaching call with my business coach, Henry Kaminsky. He's called the Brand Doctor. And he gave me this layout, and I'm like, holy crap, like that makes so much sense. I didn't ever think of it that way. But I always tell people, like, establish your audience, your target audience. You got to know who they are, because then you got to, the next step here is to go where they are. But something that he told me that I'm like, that makes perfect sense, is don't just like try to create this audience that you think they are. Create the audience that you want them to be, right? So that's what you want to do. You want to figure out the target audience that you want. So do you want somebody that's going to be a tire kicker that's going to waste your time? So for me, my target audience is a real estate investor that already knows what content marketing is and values it. They just don't have the time to do it. They just don't have the resources to do it. They don't want to do it, or they don't know how to do it. And so then they bring me in to do that. And that's my audience. That's the audience I want, is somebody that already values and knows content marketing works, but for one of these reasons, they aren't doing it right now. Whereas the audience that I don't want, I used to say it's just real estate investors, but now I say it's real estate investors that already know what content marketing is. So for me, I don't want a real estate investor that has no clue about content marketing. If you don't know about content marketing, listen to all the content I put out, because that's going to teach you the value of it. But somebody that comes in doesn't know the value already, they're going to be a lot harder to convince along the way that that they're getting results, right? Because they don't know what it is. So you got to define who you actually want that person to be. And then the last thing here is, where are they at? Because you don't want to go to a platform. I know the big buzz is TikTok right now, but at the end of the day, for me, real estate investors don't hang out on TikTok. So it's completely irrelevant and a waste of time for me to put content out on TikTok, because of the fact that they are not there. So that's a big one. You got to distribute content to where your audience is, or you will never see those results. I can tell you right now, TikTok is probably going to be one of those platforms that real estate investors in my audience aren't going to be at until another 5 to 10 years. And the only reason they may be there right now is because people are talking about it and it's the big buzz and they got shiny object syndrome. But as for me, it's a waste of time. I'd rather go hard on Facebook, go hard on Instagram, go hard on YouTube and podcast. And that's what I'm doing. So those are the foundations. Again, I got full podcasts on each one of those topics, so go back and listen to those, but that's the synopsis. So that's the foundation. You got to lay those. Make sure you do. That's step number one. Number two is the planning. So this is more of like the like this is what I got to do before I actually put content out there. So the foundation is like, you already should be doing that if you have a business, because you got to do that for your marketing purposes. But now you use that in your content marketing, in that silo. But now you got a plan for the actual content marketing. So the first thing is figure out where you're going to actually put that content. And that's why, that last step there is, where is your audience? That's why that's so important. Because again, you don't want to just distribute content wherever and however you want, and you distribute it on every single platform that's out there. You don't want to do that. That's a big waste of time, and it's going to bog you down very quickly. So pick, maybe a handful, 3, 4, maybe 5 platforms to distribute your content on, and be a sniper. Like, try to hit your target audience very hard, but you got to figure out where they're at. And that's what step number 1 of the planning is to figure out where you're going to actually put the content. And that is, once you decide where your audience is, that's going to lead you to the step number 1 of the planning, which is figure out where to put the content. So you got to figure out where to put the content. Number 2 is figure out what content you're going to put out. Now that means, am I going to do a podcast? Am I going to do a video series? Am I going to do quote cards? Am I going to do blogs and articles? What are my infographics? What am I going to do? This is important because this is why knowing your audience is so important, because you got to know what type of content they like to consume. It even goes down to the nitty gritties of, if you're going to put video content out there, does your audience consume 60-second bits, or are they cool with like 15, 20-minute videos? That is where you're getting a little bit more advanced, but you got to do that, because if you're putting 20-minute videos out there, but they're entrepreneurs and business owners that have, shiny object syndrome, and they have ADD like myself, like, it's hard for me to sit down and watch anything for 20, 40 minutes without getting distracted and doing something. And so for me, it's a lot easier to consume that bite-sized piece of content that's a 60-second video clip. And even then, I even sometimes get impatient. So you got to think about those things. What does your audience, not you, what does your audience, now I'm emphasizing that, because you more than likely are not your audience. So don't think about what you consume, think about what your audience consumes. That's why it's so important, again, to know who they are. And if you know them on that much of an intimate detail, then you're going to be able to figure out what content they're going to consume and then where to put that. The last thing here is figure out how often you're going to put it out. So that means if you do have a podcast, how often am I going to do 1 podcast a week? Am I going to go do 2 episodes a week? Am I going to do 1 a month? And if I have a video series, like if I do videos, am I doing 1 a day? Am I doing 3 a week? Or how that looks? Establish that. Now I can tell you this, that there's 2 sides of this coin, as I get this all the time. Like, how much content should we put out? I always say there's not enough content that you could put out, but at the end of the day, you got to be realistic of your time and your efforts, especially if you're doing this on your own. Now, somebody like my clients, they don't have to worry about that because we distribute for them. My company distributes the content for my clients, so they don't have to worry about that stuff. But if you're doing it on your own, you got to be realistic of what you can actually do, because what's going to happen is you're going to be like all gung-ho about this, and you're going to say, yeah, I'm going to put out 4 pieces of content every single week, or every single day I'm going to put out 4 pieces of content. That's 28, 30 pieces of content every single week. And you do it for the first 2 or 3 weeks, then you start forgetting about it because you have an active business to run and you don't have time to put out that much content in a day. And then you just kind of stop doing it, and you never get back to it. So you got to figure out what you're actually capable of doing if you're going to do it by yourself. So figure that out, how often you're going to put it out. So again, there's not really, I'm not going to tell you that there's not a limit on how much you can put out. Put out as much as you possibly can, but be realistic of what you can actually put out. For me, this podcast that I'm doing, it's realistic for me to be able to do 1 episode every single week. Now, at some point, it'll ramp up to 2 episodes a week when I feel like I have the time designated to be able to record these and stay consistent, because that's the key, is that consistency will win in the long run. Because what happens is somebody will get so deep into like, yeah, I got to do 4 episodes a week, and then they miss a week, and then they're like, oh, it's okay, I'll just do 3 this week. And then it kind of goes downhill from there, just like everything else we do in human nature. So that's the planning part. So we're going to wrap this up with the action. So actually taking action on the plan. So we've laid the foundation, we've got the plan put together. Now we're going to take action on it. These are some things that I will tell you. There's not really, so the last 2, the lay the foundation and the planning, those were like, you need to do that in that order. But this one is more of like, here's some nuggets for you to actually take action and implement your content marketing strategies. So the first thing is to use a third-party distributor. And I'm talking specifically about, like social media stuff. So we use Loomly, which is spelled Loomly. So Loomly, the reason we use that, I mean, almost all third-party distributors are kind of one and the same. It just depends on how reliable and the user experience is. So for me, I've used other platforms. I'm not going to name names, but I've used other platforms and they weren't reliable. They would always glitch out. They would disconnect our social media profiles with some of our clients just randomly. They would shut down, and then sometimes they're just it's hard to use. The user experience is not like really good. So we use Loomly, and that's what we use. So a lot of the content we do put out is actually manual as well. But there are platforms like YouTube and Facebook pages where you can actually schedule those out. So utilize those schedulers on those native platforms to put your content out. So what I do is for our YouTube, some of our clients have YouTube channels, and I'll sit down once a week and schedule out all their episodes for the week, or sometimes I even schedule them out for the full month. So one day a month, I'll schedule the entire month's worth of videos out. And that's just the easiest thing for me to do. So you got to figure out what works for you. But for our clients, we schedule out at least 6-7 days in advance so that it's kind of recurring. And so that's how that works. So then the next thing is to batch produce your content. Now, what I mean by that is, so for instance, this podcast that I'm recording right now, I'm sitting down and I'm recording like 3 or 4 episodes right in a row, and that's good enough for me to stretch out for the month. And so this is what I do with my clients is I actually go to their location once a month, my monthly reoccurring clients, and I go to their location once a month and we do 15, 20 pieces of content, like the pillar content. We record that, and then I can use that and distribute that, dice that up and chop it up for the rest of the month. That's what we do. So that's that's what's called batching your content. So sit down, if you figure out you want to do a podcast and you want to do one a week, do one day every single month. Pick a day every single month. Maybe it's the first Saturday of the month, and you record all your episodes for that month. So it's easy to do, because if you don't do that and you're recording one a week, then you can get lost in the woodwork and then forget, oh, I forgot I had to put out a podcast episode today. All right, let me go record one real quick, and then it's half-assed. So you don't want to do that for sure. So batch your content. Then that kind of leads me into, plan one day per week to schedule your content out. So, or per month, you could do once a week, once per month. So like I said, batch your content, actually creating it. So that means you're sitting down and recording the episode, but then you got to sit down and plan one day a week or one day a month to actually schedule those out on those third-party distributors, so that you're not, randomly putting out the content whenever you feel like it or whenever you have time, because then you're just going to forget about it and it's never going to get out. So plan that. I got 2 more things here and then we're going to wrap it up. So the next thing is, this is extremely important. And I'm telling people this all the time, and I feel like they always think that they got to have, like this big setup. They got to have lights. They got to have a massive camera. They got to have the best software and all that. At the end of the day, guys, putting content out is easy, but people make it difficult. And what I mean by that is I want you to make sure that you make it easy for yourself. Don't complicate the process. So, I'm giving you these easy, actionable steps that you can do to actually get consistent content out. The problem I see is that people that don't know, they're not actual content producers. They're a business owner and they run a specific business. So they don't know creative. They don't know how to produce a good video and that kind of thing. There's not a problem with that. You can do content on your own. And it's as easy as picking up your cell phone and recording a video and then putting that on Facebook. But the problem I see is with people, they try to get all this gear. I don't know how many clients I've visited and I see in the corner, there's $10,000 worth of equipment. They have more equipment than what I have as an actual content producer. And they've never even taken it out of the box. So don't overcomplicate it. Make it as simple and easy as possible for yourself to do it, because the easier you make it for yourself, the easier it's going to be to actually get you to do the content. If you complicate it for yourself, you're going to make excuses. It's just the same thing as eating right? In order to eat right, you got to prepare. You got to do meal prep for the entire week. You got to make sure that you're getting the right foods. It's easier to just go to McDonald's, right? It's hard to actually, meal prep and that kind of thing. But if you set yourself up for the success, make it easy for yourself, and you actually meal prep as opposed to just randomly eating good stuff, then you're going to actually go through with what you're meant to do. So make it easy for yourself. Don't overcomplicate the system. Like people nowadays, the way content kind of developed, it's easier than ever for people to consume content on a level that is more of a raw feel as opposed to produce. I don't know how many times I've seen people spend thousands of dollars. They actually produce the content. They're putting out good quality looking content, but they're getting no results. And then I see people like shooting videos all day with their phone and they have 300,000, followers on Instagram. So the quality of the actual production is far less important than the actual quality of the content coming out of your mouth, right? So focus on that more than the production. The only reason I have all this stuff is because I am a content producer. I am a content creator. But at the end of the day, you don't see like this insane backdrop behind me and like these massive studio lights and stuff like that. Like, no, I mean, the light that I have here is just a little ring light that I bought for $20 on Amazon. You know what I'm saying? So just make it easy for yourself. And then the last thing that I got here is just keep moving forward, guys. Like if you're serious about content, if you're going to put it out and you want the results, if you want to do this, just keep moving forward. Don't look at the numbers. Don't worry about like, oh, I didn't get 100,000 downloads on my podcast episode today and you're 2 episodes deep. Like don't think about it that way. You got to focus on your goal and what you want to do. I always tell people content is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Advertising is a sprint, but content marketing is a marathon. You're in it for the long run. It's harder to build relationships through marketing. And the best way to do that is through content marketing, to where you're building so much value, because that's what content marketing is it's delivering value to people. And that means that it's a little bit more difficult to build a relationship with somebody. But at the end of the day, when you do build that relationship with somebody, it's a lot stronger than the sprint that you ran with putting an ad out there towards them. And then when you come out with a product or service, they're more than likely to pull the trigger than just shooting an advertisement to them. And that's it. So keep that in mind. Keep moving forward. Content is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So that's what I got for you guys. A lot of information, a lot of insane things. I know this podcast went a little bit longer than they typically do, but I wanted to get this out to you because I think it's important to make sure you get consistent content out there. I want to see you guys succeed in this. I wanted to see you actually get the results that you're looking for. Again, don't focus on the vanity metrics. Vanity metrics are likes, comments, shares, followers, all that stuff. Focus on the goal. Go back to the foundation and figure out what your goal is. Figure out your target audience and where they're at, and just do that stuff. So again, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm here at your disposal. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Josh@colormedia.com, colored spelled CULLER, and ask me any questions. If there's a topic you want me to cover on the podcast, then please let me know and I'd be more than happy to do that. And make sure you are subscribed to the show if you aren't already. Make sure to check out any links in the description. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, head back over to the homepage, leave me a review, and I would much appreciate that. Thank you in advance. So that's going to do it for today's episode. I'll catch you guys next week on the Content Marketing Playbook. This is Josh Culler, and I'll see you later. Peace.